In other news tonight, a multi-disciplinary team has arrested a fugitive in Paarl, wanted in connection with the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. The 61-year-old man is due to appear in court tomorrow after being on the run for decades. Get you a live update now from our reporter, Athi Mtongana. Athi, tell us more about what we know about the circumstances of this man's detention.
Well, Temegile, what we know about 61-year-old Kaishime, who is a fugitive, of course, from Rwanda, is that he was indicted by the United Nations, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda back in 2001, of course, charged among other charges for the genocide of Tutsi refugees from the Nyange Catholic Church in Rwanda. Of course, some of the other charges include the conspiracy to commit genocide. And so through the recent efforts of course, the UN International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals and various South African law enforcement agencies, which include the Directorate for Priority Crimes here in South Africa, and actually the intelligence, the crime intelligence here in the Western Cape, all those efforts through all those bodies, Temegile, led to the arrest of 61-year-old Kaishime at a grape farm in Paarl yesterday. Of course, he was arrested, of course, as one of the fugitives who fled Rwanda. He was actually a police inspector in Rwanda back in 1994, and of course, since the indictment in 2001 and since fleeing Rwanda, he's used a false identity, and so he was found at a grape farm in Paarl yesterday through the cooperation of all these other bodies and the law enforcement agencies in South Africa, including the Department of Home Affairs. And so we're expecting him to appear tomorrow behind me at the Belleville Magistrates Court. But I also want to point out, Temegile, that Kaishime is one of the perpetrators who are believed to have been behind the activities that led to them trying to find petrol, number one, to go and burn the Nyembe church where those Tutsi refugees were in. When those efforts failed, we believe that they then proceeded to bulldoze the Nyenge church, the Catholic church in Rwanda, which obviously ended up killing those 2,000 Tutsi refugees who were buried under that rubble. And 2 days later, they then proceeded, Nyembe and all these other co-perpetrators took those bodies, including women, children, and the elderly, to mass graves around Rwanda. So those are the heinous activities and the heinous crimes that Kaishime is now charged with. In fact, since the indictment back in 2001. And so he will be appearing behind me here at the Belleville Magistrates Court, of course, under the South African judicial authorities, which will then, of course, get into a process of looking at how they will extradite him back to Rwanda.
And actually, do we know how long Fulgence Kaishime had been in South Africa before he was arrested?
Because the indictment stems back from 2001 and because he's been using false identities throughout the period from which he fled Rwanda, we do not actually know at this stage how long he's been in South Africa. Remember, this is a joint operation that also included the Department of Home Affairs, which was able to identify and point out the false name that he used at the grape farm in Paarl. This entire operation, I must mention, Temegile, also includes a task team that was established by President Cyril Ramaphosa in order to assist the UN International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals to be able to track and trace fugitives who fled, who are fingered in the Rwanda genocide. So at this stage, those details will probably be touched on tomorrow when he makes his very first court appearance here at the Belleville Magistrates Court. And again, like I mentioned, where they will, of course, get into details as to how the extradition process will unfold to get him back to Rwanda.
Athi Mtongana, thank you very much for that update from a rainy Cape Town tonight.